I'm very happy to be sitting here with Dr. Jim McCarty, and we're going to talk a little bit about the challenges for people with TMJ and how he has an incredible solution to relieve this situation for people struggling with it. And thank you so much for being here.
I'm glad to be here, Karen.
Well, a lot of people who have TMJ just don't seem to be able to get some relief from it or, find a solution. And I think it would be amazing if you could just explain, what it is that you found that you can do for people as a professional and what you do to help them relieve this horrible situation.
Well, first of all, just to let you know, I personally had TMJ.
Okay.
I've suffered through it myself, and so I know firsthand what it feels like to only be able to chew on one side of your mouth for several years and to have an open bite on the other side so that your teeth don't meet and to have the pain that goes along with it in your head and the depression that can come along with it.
Now, why does depression end up following that? Is it just because it's just so
well,
frustrating to have to deal with that?
yeah, there's pain itself. The jaw itself isn't working properly,
Right.
and it actually affects the skull bones.
Okay.
And so, as it's affecting the skull bones, then there's pressure that gets applied to the brain, and then the neurotransmitters don't get made. And so, without the neurotransmitters, the person just becomes depressed.
Okay. So what is the solution, doctor?
Well, the main thing is that relieve the pressure off the brain, off the skull and off the brain. What most people are doing is they'll go to the dentist because they think that, oh, there's a popping and clicking in my jaw. So they go to the dentist. And then he will tell them, oh, you have TMJ. He'll take an x-ray, put his fingers in his ears or in front of their ears and feel for opening and closing the jaw, and they feel this popping and clicking. So then he'll say, well, we're going to make a splint, okay, appliance for them to wear in their mouth to try to work with their teeth, okay, their bite. And he's going to tell them that the problem is caused from clenching. Well, the problem's not caused from clenching at all. That's just another symptom. But they have been taught, the dentists have been taught in dental school that it's all about occlusion, occlusion, occlusion. So he works to make a splint to make the teeth meet together a little bit better. And that only gets about a 10% success rate, a 90% failure rate.
Wow.
And then there's a second type of TMJ doctor that they call a neuromuscular dentist. And the neuromuscular dentist does exactly the same thing, but he adds one more step. And he says, well, your jaws are so tight and they're in spasm. If we can just relax those muscles, those chewing muscles, the masseter muscles, if we can get them to relax completely, then we'll make the splint in that position. So they put a little TENS unit on, a little electrical unit, fatigue the muscles for a half hour, and then they make the splint. So that gets about a 25% success rate over 4 to 6 years. So
4 to 6 years?
4 to 6 years.
Wow, that's like a long time to
And they're
be
still
in
in pain.
pain. Exactly.
And still got the depression.
Right.
Still chewing on one side. Okay.
Oh my goodness.
And then every month they'll adjust the split every month or two until they get it to where the person can chew with it, live with it, and they go, well, I'm a little bit better. Okay. But then the body, inflammation in the body begins to settle in, and so everything heals in this odd, awkward, wrong position. Okay, so that's the failure way of treating TMJ. There is a successful way of treating the TMJ.
And I'm looking forward to hearing what that is.
And that's what I do. I'm a
Right.
chiropractor,
Right.
first of all, and I've learned to look for what we call subluxation complexes in the head and the spine. And so the subluxation complex would be, again, compression and twisting. And so there is a bone in the head. Everybody calls it their temple,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very flexible. much more flexible than everybody thinks. And the interesting thing about that bone, it's actually the sphenoid bone, is it acts like a seesaw, and it gets tilted and then it gets compressed. And it gets compressed for various reasons, because your hormones are out of balance, because you've got stress, or because you got an injury to your head. So it gets compressed, and then the temporal bone itself is what the ear is connected to. And the disc for the TMJ is connected to the skull. It's connected to the temporal bone.
Okay.
So the dentists are completely ignoring the temporal bone portion of the TMJ. They're just focused on upper and lower jaw, how's the teeth meet. So in essence, what happens is when the sphenoid bone, which looks like a butterfly, when it gets compressed and tilted, then what begins to happen is it compresses the roof of the mouth, the palatine suture. It compresses the upper jaw, the cheekbones. Everything gets compressed. It then begins to affect breathing through the nose. So you can't breathe as well through your nose. You become a mouth breather, you may start snoring, and you get depressed.
Wow.
So what I do is I actually find and remove those compression and twisting in the skull plates by using a little balloon up the nose. It's attached to a blood pressure cuff.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, NASA's done some research back in 2004 showing that the skull plates move. And in 2006 on CNN, then they did a report about balloon sinuplasty, where the medical doctors were taking a little balloon attached to a blood pressure cuff.
So instead of rhinoplasty, it's what is it called?
Sinuplasty.
Sinuplasty.
So, but they're going up the nose into the actual sinuses. And I'm not doing anything
Yeah,
like
wow.
that.
Yeah, that
We're
sounds...
going through the nose to the throat, just kind of like if you were doing an upper GI.
But what does that achieve by, you're inflating the balloon, obviously, once
Yeah.
it's in there, and it does what?
It actually incrementally releases the sphenoid bone.
Why?
So the compression that has been compressing the brain and keeping the spinal fluid from flowing,
Mm-hmm.
that compression is released. And as it releases, then the spinal fluid starts to flow. The brain rehydrates.
So is that a one-time procedure that you would use to do that?
No, it's a process. It's an incremental process. There are 6 skull plates, and normally it will take about 4 to 6 individual treatments to unlock one skull plate. So whenever I'm working with that particular person, then it'll take, on the average, about 24 to 36 individual treatments to get the whole skull unlocked.
Mm-hmm.
And then and that's spaced out over about 6 to 12 months.
So when do they start feeling the better and the relief from the TMJ?
Most of the patients, about half of them, begin to feel better after we get 2 skull plates unlocked.
Okay.
So this one right here, where the front 2 teeth come together under the nose, deals with the palatine suture, and right at the bridge of the nose, which is where the frontal bone meets with all these other bones.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, they must just, I can't even imagine what it must be like once you get the whole thing handled and people have relief from this situation.
Well, once you get the skull plates unlocked, then the spinal fluid begins to flow.
Right.
And the spinal fluid is a liquid, it's fluid,
Mm-hmm.
in an enclosed space under pressure. So that's the definition of hydraulic system. So the hydraulics from that spinal fluid starting to flow better actually pushes the bones and holds them in their correct position. So once you get the skull unlocked, it tends to stay there.
Wow, that's
You know,
incredible.
everybody asks chiropractors, they say, well, am I going to have to come see you, every month
Right,
for the rest of my life?
Right.
You know, I say, no, we're working to fix a problem. You find the problem, you fix the problem, the person's good to go. Now, I do tell them, I say, about every year, it's good to come see me and let me check to see if you need a tune-up.
Right. Wow, that's wonderful to know. And for people who either are struggling with this themselves or they know somebody that is, how do they reach you?
Well, they can go to my website, drmccarty.com.
And let's spell it so that people know it's M-A-R.
No,
No.
it's drmccarty.com.
Yeah, I figured they got the doctor part. I just wanted to spell your name, but that's great. And then and they could get more information about everything that you do at your website and
Oh,
your
sure.
contact information.
Oh, sure.
Wonderful. And I did hear you say that for people who are not real close to you, you can speak to people over the phone about their situation.
Oh, yeah. In
Right.
fact, I want people to call me. In fact, the first thing we do is we want them to get educated,
Right.
do their due diligence, find out about what I'm doing and the research behind it, the scientific research, because it's on the cutting edge.
Right.
Now, I've been doing the advanced cranial work now for 17 years, okay? But we're getting ready to turn how dentistry deals with TMJ 180 degrees. I mean, this is how TMJ will be treated in the future, and it's here now.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for explaining that, and I'm sure you're going to bring relief to a lot of people that are still suffering. So thank you, doctor, for spending this time.
Well, you're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Glad to be here.